But I do have to do this intro in the style of Crimes of the Future. Okay.
I'm excited.
Hello. Welcome to this week's episode of Hello Weekly. This week, Nick and George talk about Crimes of the Future. I had to do my Chris. That was my.
It's creeping me out.
Yeah, sorry. I had to do it because I had to channel my editor, Kristen Stewart, and do this intro because that's how she talks in the movie. And it's kind of awesome. So
it is very awesome.
Crimes.
I've never heard evil whispering staccato before.
Well, you have heard evil staccato.
I have.
The car, remember? When it honks, it said evil staccato honking or something.
That
like
was
that.
Amazing.
Yeah,
that was a great subtitle. Speaking of, there's a subtitle in this movie that I want to shout out at some point. Not now, but that's weird that we already got there. Good.
So if you don't know what Crimes of the Future is, David Cronenberg is back. After like how long has it been since he made him?
For horror, quite a while.
I always forget and I still do to this day. Him and Soderbergh, I still like get them.
You swap them.
Yeah, I swap them up for some reason because I know like they're both people who've like done some like great movies and take long breaks and then they randomly come back.
That's actually it's interesting that you mix them up. It's a testament to how much Cronenberg strayed from horror to art house that you would even confuse them.
Yeah. Let me read the synopsis real quick. Okay.
For those who haven't seen it yet, and by the way, this is gonna be a spoilerific review, so if you haven't seen it, good luck.
Yeah, I will say this though, even with talking about spoilers, like it's not like one of those like it's not like a twist that comes halfway. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like it's so you're even if we spoil something, you're gonna be okay because it's kind of
I'm watching this. I'll spoil Videodrome for people too. Long live the new flesh. You're right. You can't spoil. You're right. Never mind.
Well, it's a good thing we're not doing a video for this one because I was gonna reach into my stomach.
Gross.
Well, hey, we can still do it for this episode too.
True.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Okay, as the human species adapts to a synthetic environment, the body undergoes new transformations and mutations. Accompanied by his partner, celebrity performance artist Saul Tenser, which is a great name, showcases the metamorphosis of his organs. Meanwhile, a mysterious group tries to use Saul's notoriety to shed light on the next phase of human evolution. So that's what this is about.
Man, I wish I had read that before I seen this. That would have made a lot of the struggling.
I read it while you were getting ready. I was like pulling it up, and then I read it. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess that is like what happens, like page to page."
There's also a lot missing there, but weirdly, as I think we're going to discuss a lot here, I think this is a meaning-free movie in a lot of ways for David Cronenberg. That's surprising to me. And we're going to talk about how kind of strangely relaxing a lot of this was. So I'm excited.
Very
to get to
interesting.
all that.
You say like kind of like meaningless. Like
I mean, I found tons of meaning there, and I'm going to talk about a bunch of it in a hopefully not boring way. But it's not front and center. It's him.
Right.
It's being like it made me so. Cronenberg got mythologized and MCU'd, and we're used to Easter eggs and complexities and Mr. Robot and Black Mirror stuff. So I think we process content differently now. But the weird thing is, people didn't do that with The Fly.
No.
The Fly wasn't. People were walking around talking about all the meaning of The Fly. I mean, there were deep books written about The Fly or whatever, but that most horror fans took it as gross and cool, right? Like that's kind of this, but the hilarious dark version of it.
It's weird because like I know what you mean by like it's not meaningless. Like there's like void of meaning, but like it's so weird. Like the visual that popped in my head as you were saying that was like a flaky, buttery. Baked good, you know what I mean? Like
because you really loved this movie visually. I watched you loving just being in the world of this movie, which is so
but there's like a lot of like layers to this, but they're all very, very light, if that makes sense.
I totally. That's how it comes off. I don't think that's how it is. I think so. I'm just gonna put my cards on the table. I think this is the best movie of the year now. I went back and watched it, and I am so in on this movie. And
well, that comes before you've seen Marcel the Shell with Shoes On.
That's true. That's totally true.
Was really good.
That's totally true. But this movie it moved ahead of everything everywhere all at once and a whole bunch of other stuff. Like I think this is the best movie of the year. The weird thing though is it's not because it's so meaningful and complicated. It's for different reasons, which I wouldn't have expected from how everyone took Cronenberg. but that we'll get there. I can, so here, let's do this. I can tell the story real quick of kind of what I think about this movie. I call it a tale of two images, right?
All right.
So in the beginning of this movie, there's an image of a child who dies, who's murdered. And that child, the mother makes a pretty cold call to someone to inform the father to come pick up the body of their child. It's cold. The way she does it is cold, right? And then the father comes and walks into this really deserted looking house and sees this dead body of his son and kneels down next to it, and it silhouettes out. And you just see a father shoulder shaking a little bit. By the way, Scott Speedman was amazing in this movie. I was not prepared for the underworld guy to be this good, but be good at this. Like, he kind of stole us a lot of the scenes he was in, which was incredible. But so you got this shot of a father over the body of his dead child. And what would that mean? Like, if you just saw a silhouette of that with no other context, what does that tell you? It's sad.
It's some kind of grief.
It's a parent grieving
sadness,
for a child, right? And then the very next shot is this weird spidery upside down bed contraption with Viggo Mortensen in it, like drifting in the air, webby and gross and squishy, and him like moving back and forth in it in this weirdo fucking way. You don't even know what it is until like whatever. But your brain can't even make what that image is, right? So it's one image that you totally think you understand, and the next image that you have no idea what's going on. And because Cronenberg world is so interesting, it turns out after the story is told and you've watched the movie, you didn't understand the first image at all. It was not a father grieving over their normal son. The mother did not kill the child because she's like a cold, callous mother who didn't care about her children. Nothing in that image was telling you the truth. That image was a lie. You didn't understand anything that was happening there. The next image is a fairly well-off, rich white guy of means and privilege, an artist, relatively famous, with a fancy, expensive contraption in his room that helps him sleep more comfortably, and him and some expensive company are trying to figure out how to make it work better for him over time. That's a totally normal image. I mean, it looks fucking weird as shit, but it's a completely normal, understandable, everyday thing that privileged people are doing all over the place, trying to order chilled mattresses and complicated stuff and like whatever. So like the first image that you didn't understand was a completely normal, everyday event. And the first image that you thought you understood was fucking weird as shit because it's a plastic eating kid and a guy who wants to expose his dead kid to the world in an autopsy art show. This is Cronenberg.
Sounds like West Hollywood to me.
Right, exactly. So in just two images, this is how tricky this movie is. You think you're understanding what you're seeing and you're not. And then where you aren't understanding what you're seeing, that's probably where everything is the most normal.
You're right.
And it happens again and again in the movie, right? Like where you think something is gross and complicated, like someone is unzipping Viggo's stomach and making out with his innards, and everyone's like, oh, gross, walk out of the theater. But they're just making out. As a matter of fact, Viggo's even embarrassed at one point. He's like trying to like kiss back and he gets hit with a coughing fit. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm not good at the old sex.
Right.
Like that's just the old sex. It's just a makeout scene. It's just like you've seen this in thousands of films. It's just a makeout scene.
We saw it at Boat Cinema with Top Gun. And Tom Cruise and the other lady were just tonguing each other.
Oh my God, that did not
silhouetted
age. What
tonguing, man. Yikes.
Anyway, I don't want to go, but that's part of the magic, and it happens again and again and again in this movie, where this movie is not trustworthy and something else is happening here. But it's not that it's so meaningful. It's that the movie is trying to figure it out for itself. That's the most dangerous kind of filmmaker, the kind of person who makes a movie because they're trying to figure something out and you're in the way as the audience.
Going back to those layers.
Yes.
I have another visual of how I think it. They're kind of just like flashes in the pan of like what I think Cronenberg's might be slightly thinking about something. He's not leaning into it 100%.
Like neurons fire, like little epiphanies.
It's just like, I wonder what that's about. Okay, now we're moving on to there. Because I saw some interviews with him where people were asking him, is it about this? And he was like, oh, yeah. Like, yeah, I guess it is. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of there's a lot of moments in Crimes of the Future where it kind of feels like maybe he had a thought or two about this one thing, but he's not committed to that thought.
Right.
One of them being like they kind of tackle two things that I saw.
Yes.
Was tackling like influencer culture.
Yes.
In fact, I think they referred to someone as an influencer at one point in time in the film.
And the whole structure is influency. Like half the people in this movie are influencers of some kind of.
Yes, there's a flash in the pan of
there's Mr. 38 Ears.
Yeah, Doug. What's his name? Doug.
Jones.
Yeah, Doug Jones. So there was that I saw, and these flashes they don't hammer on them, they don't go to them. It's just they kind of present it, and then you kind of could just fill in what you think about it. The film doesn't really have a say on it. There's
a woman who flays her face open, and it looks like she has gills, and you think the movie's going to make a big deal out of it, and then she just goes and has a normal cocktail conversation with someone for 20 seconds, and then it's over.
The second,
like you're saying,
the second thing that was more in the background that I noticed was everyone filming everything, just specifically during like any sort of performance. Like if you look at it, I think it's not everyone because I look, but it's damn near. I want to say
it's almost like Fight Club.
There's like 90%.
Yeah,
everyone has a camera, and it's not like a film. Not holding up their phone. Like they're using like what looks like Super
ring
8
cameras.
Yeah,
like literally ring cameras. Like Leia Sitter's ring. She has a ring on her finger, and she films people with it.
Oh, that's right. She does have the. It's funny. I thought
it's a ring
camera. I thought about like the ring on
of
my
course.
door. But then some people have like Super 8 cameras, like during like the performances, and there's like hardly anyone like experiencing it and just watching it to watch it. Which kind of
it was a lot like the new Candyman. In that way, because there are a
Yes.
lot of art gallery scenes where people were just filming, taking pictures of themselves.
It's funny that one of the I don't know how golf works, but PGA World I don't know what the fuck it is.
Yes.
But just recently a story blew up because Tiger Woods was taking a shot or something like that, and surrounding him was just a bunch of dudes all with the camera out. But then there was one guy just watching him and all holding like a Michelob Ultra or something like that. And somebody took a photo of it, and they're like, he's the only one who's really taking it. And they actually did studies where...
I didn't see that, but that's cool.
Yeah, and so it blew up, and he ended up getting like they ended up using it in an ad, and I think it might have been my Budweiser, some beer company.
That's really cool.
They ended up, he now has like lifetime tickets to these events because of it. It
Hell
blew
yeah.
up. But they also did, there was a study done that...
You're stuck drinking one kind of beer forever, though.
That's a crime of the future.
Yeah.
I have a lot of crimes of the future. I got one up my sleeve about the Supreme Court.
There's a lot of criming going on.
But they did a study saying that a lot of people who don't film it tend to have a better memory of it. In
that's
the future.
gotta be true.
And I feel like maybe that is something that Cronenberg was hitting on there too, where a lot of people want to film it for some kind of clout to post online,
but they're
not really there.
Totally, and I totally agree. And there are actually, first of all, Viggo's performance is the most masterful comedic performance of our times. He has so mmany funny lines. This movie is like My Birdemic. There are like 50 quotable Viggo lines in this movie. So he's just hilarious. There's one of my favorite little moments of his is everyone keeps telling him like that he can be open with this or open with that. And he keeps getting burned by it. There's this people like, can I be open with you? And they're like, yeah. And then later the secret comes out, like he gets totally betrayed. So there's this moment when he's in the room with Kristen Stewart. And he's like, is this room secure? And she's like, yeah. You can be totally open with me. He's like, yeah, open. You just hear in his voice, like, everyone keeps telling me open. Fuck you all. Okay. But anyway, so he's amazing. Like he gives this incredible performance in the movie, but it's this. I think the best acting in this movie to me is, if I could give an Oscar, it would be to the chair.
I knew you were gonna say the chair. I was ready.
Fucking chair at the end. Can we just deal with the most amazing thing that happens in this movie with this chair? Because I think that this movie did this most genius thing with tech that reminds me of what you're saying about like the tech breaking down. Is I think the tech is tired. I think in horror, we think of AI like Ex Machina. It becomes super powerful and it outmaneuvers us and takes over the world and or whatever. But what if Cronenberg is right? What if our tech also gets sick with us? and we all just get sick.
Right.
This chair was fighting so fucking hard all movie to help Vigo eat.
Right.
It did everything it could. Techs were coming in and out, doing little adjustments and tweaks. The chair was knocking around. It's got its little Kubrickian hands in the air with its
like moving
fingers
his jaw.
open. Yeah, like, but it looks horrible. It looks like broken and angled and awful. It looks like something like Tim Burton would have put in the Sleepy Hollow that got run over.
It kind of looks like it reminded me of the thing that Catherine O'Hara gets trapped in Beetlejuice.
Totally right, but worse, way worse. And so this chair is moving around and like whatever, and then they feed Vigo some plastic, and he can digest it, and the chair stops moving, and then it starts purring.
Oh, I forgot about the chair.
Literally chair. The last shot of this
Watch
movie
this
on
with subtitles.
On my TV, the last shot of this movie is a black screen with a subtitle just saying purring, and it gave me chills. And I loved it so much because this chair was fighting to help him digest, and when he finally was able to digest something, the chair just shut down. It was like a computer that was running hot, like 500 degrees, and it's trying to get this thing like downloaded or uploaded for you, and your screen's going black and smoke's going everywhere, and you're like, computer, you can do it. And then it goes, file complete, and the computer just shuts down, and you just hear the computer go, that's what happens in this movie. And I'm laughing, but it's actually really kind of chilling and serious. It's kind of the horror part of the movie because it reminded me of the pandemic and all this stuff. Like looking around and there's antigen tests on the street and like fucking mask everywhere. Like the websites are, you're going to the websites, they can't update data, like everything, whatever. I read this article the other day that said like 80% of New York Times articles that were archived 1980 and back are just dead links. Like the internet's decaying behind us. It's like we're climbing a rope that's on fire underneath us, and like everything's erasing out underneath us. Our tech is breaking, right?
Wow.
And Cronenberg is diagnosing that like your tech is an extension of your body. Backwards and forwards. Flesh is like interchangeable with the tech. Like your tools are you. It's the same thing that Kubrick was saying when you threw a bone in the air and it turned into a spaceship. It looked like a bone, right? So, but in this movie, the tech got ill, like terminally ill with us. And I find that fascinating. And no other movie has ever done that. And it makes me think that if AI ever becomes sentient, it might look around and be like, oh my God, I'm tired.
Shut down.
I'm going back. It's like that famous machine where you press the button and a hand comes out and presses the button and closes it back down. Like that, AI might do that. If it does, Cronenberg will have predicted it, and I will love it.
Also, that's a good point about the tech, because not all, like out of like the three big tech pieces, the bed, the chair, and the autopsy machine, two of them hardly worked.
Yeah, and that Sark machine was more an art piece than a thing, and that was the weirdest. Everyone was fetishizing the Sark machine. Like the technicians were like, "He's got a Sark module in his house.
He's got the old one. That's great.
He's got the.
You ever use it?
He's got the first one. It'd be like having the blimp they made before the Hindenburg or something in your garage. You're like, whoa! So, I mean, that was amazing.
Another layer that was totally there. He definitely hit on like some climate change stuff, like we're over polluting the earth,
for sure,
especially with all of us now.
Yeah, with plastic.
Yeah, in fact, there's a lot of memes now where it's like, I want everything bagel, add the microplastics, like that kind of.
Totally.
And I mean, there's so many TikToks now where like, it's like some scientist with a microscope, and he's like, all right, I bought this hot dog from the grocery store. Let's slide it under there, and there it is. And you're like, son of a bitch.
That's awesome.
I hate this life. This is terrible. I don't like it. But again, nothing was hammered away.
No, it's not. Don't look up.
Exactly.
He'd never done that, and he's done that before. He's been pretty obvious. I mean, The Fly is pretty obviously about degenerative illness,
right?
Right. But like this one's more subtle. It's weird because it reminds me a lot of Videodrome, and it's structured similarly to Videodrome, and it's strange because it's like the old artist's version of Videodrome. It's like
Right.
it's like what Van Gogh painted when he got really complicated and old right before he was done, right? And not the young, fiery, like whatever. Because it's like the Irishman, and that's I don't mean it that way. For in Scorsese's career, it's like that kind of vibe for him, right?
Right.
But the weird thing is, it comes from really young material that he wrote a long time ago. But he did like the calm Cronenberg.
That's what I wanted to talk about. That how like weirdly calming this movie.
I could just put this in the background and just enjoy it. Like, it's so weird.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, so before we watched it, we were like, you've seen more Cronenberg than me. Like I still haven't seen Scanners or Videodrome. Right. I think I've seen The Fly. I saw
You saw Eastern Promises.
Eastern Promises.
So you saw one of his best non-horror.
Yeah, and so going into it, like knowing about, like The Fly and like the body. Every time you hear David Cronenberg, you immediately think of body horror. Totally. And the imagery of body horror is loud, if that makes sense.
It is.
Especially like with Scanners, you see the head blown everywhere. You look at Jeff Goldblum, body horror looks loud because it's like, it's just kind of unnatural and unsettling. But this movie, I mean, it's like this movie is like Starbucks jazz. Like you just put it on.
It was a lot more like The Cell.
Yeah.
Right? Like it was, you're in a world now and you're interested. So even if there's horrifying stuff, you're just interested. And the visuals were strangely comforting. It was weird. I think that's on purpose. There's something strange that's happening also with the architecture in here. There's a very weird moment in the scene where Kristen Stewart and Viggo are, trying the old sex. And she says something really about the building they're in and how the building is part of them, and that there's a white light that radiates out from that building, and that white light is you, Saul Tenser. And it's a strange like passage moment in there where they're talking about whatever, but I can't do justice to it on a podcast. You'd have to like actually see that scene. But what's the strangest about it is what you're actually seeing when she's saying it, because it is the world's shittiest building.
Yeah, like
it is the world's absolute trash building. There's nothing but mottled gray plaster behind her, right? And she's bragging about how we're in this building. This building is part of us.
It might have been a Home Depot, honestly.
Totally. It looked like nothing, but she kept talking about how it was part of them, and I think it was. See, that's the problem. Is Kristen Stewart was talking in this like effect robotic way, where the emotions were all very regulated, and you got to understand that this is how I see things, right? So she was doing this like very wound up, very like, thing. And the architecture looked like how she sounded. I don't know how to explain it, but it was kind of saying you're melting into your surroundings, and kind of like as we're going through this big isolation phase as we're recording this, like over these years of dealing with COVID or whatever, that's horrifying notion that your surroundings like ooze to you and grab on you, like whatever, especially if you're spending a lot of time on one. So I just found the movie just like it was doing these kind of things, but they were so light touches, like you were saying. They were just little flashes or little bonbons he was throwing at you.
Yeah.
They weren't like a big, meaningful, like you said, it's weird for him, but I loved it.
It's also kind of strange because the season finale of The Last Drive-In showed Nightbreed, and it's kind of weird watching David Cronenberg act, and then watching him direct a movie
totally
like this.
He was incredible in that, though.
He was very good in that. Now I can finally say I watched Nightbreed. I know where that mask comes from. The gore in the movie, that's kind of a big one, and I was expecting.
Is it?
I mean, it is in terms of like
what's the goriest moment?
Well, I mean, what I mean by big is when it comes to the discourse of the movie.
Oh, you're right.
Especially when
we're in the court, right?
Yeah,
especially a lot of people talk about right.
Especially when it was in Cannes, and they were like, people were walking out. Like you expect like to see like this really nasty, horrific, gory, gooey stuff, and while the gore looked amazing, it was nothing that like was unsettling. It wasn't like
No.
disgusting or like, you know, even when you know, they have that funny moment with Doug Jones when he's, you know, he's like a competing artist and he's dancing with, you know, I think like 35 ears on him or something like that. And the one woman says like, "That's terrible. Who would want that? You know, surround sound." The effects of it look great.
Great.
But they're not unsettling. They're not disgusting. They're not like kind of grotesque. Like, you know, it's weird. You know, like Vigo's growing extra organs in him.
Yeah.
But I didn't. Nothing like really shocked me.
No, that's what I'm saying. Is I couldn't imagine walking out of this movie for any reason. What the hell were they thinking? They unless you were just brand new to Cronenberg and you know it just really freaked you out. It was strange that especially since there was so much good entertainment to be had. I just remembered this one Vigo moment where he applies for the inner beauty pageants.
Oh
where
yeah,
he goes to register for the inner beauty pageant, and he shows up to do it. And the guy is like passive aggressive with him, and he says some shit about how you know, by chopping out your organs, you're kind of resisting your own evolution. And we believe the evolution of these inner beauties is great, but you don't see it that way. You're like tattooing them and putting them on a wall and then throwing them away. like So it's kind of against what we stand for. And Figo's like, "Oh, well, if you don't want me part of your inner beauty project, I'll leave." He's like, "No, it'll all fall apart without you. Don't leave." So then he's like begging him. He's like, "No, we'll give him whatever you want." And Vigo like turns the knife. He goes, "Well, what if my organ I grow inside me wins the inner beauty pageant, and then I throw it in a trash can at my next show? Won't that embarrass you?" And he's like, "You can do whatever you want. You're a celebrity. Like, you'll do whatever." And then Vigo looks at him. He's like, "Okay, so we rewind. I'm here for the inner beauty pageant." And it's fucking hilarious. How is that not hilarious? Oh, I mean, it's just it's comedy in there, and the people are walking out of a movie that's basically hilarious, which is also hilarious. You're leaving a comedy. It makes no sense.
What did you think of the like humans not feeling pain?
Incredible, right? Like,
pretty interesting.
I mean, that will happen eventually. Like, I mean, if we're verging on curing some sort of forms of cancer, which as we sit here, that's happening, right? Like, they'll cure pain, and then people will. I mean, you know, people do dumb shit on a dare all the time. In a world that has Jackass Forever,
I was gonna say, if we get rid of pain, there's no more Jackass.
If you get rid of pain, Jackass becomes terrifying because they'll injure themselves and not know it.
Oh my god! Right. Now that would get pretty gross.
I thought that was pretty. So, what did you think of the ending? So he's in the chair. He eats the plastic candy
after having a bunch of problems with the chair. It's not working. He's exhausted.
The chair purrs, and then he eats the plastic, and the camera closes on him with this possibly angelic, relaxed look on his face. He's being filmed by Leia Sadu, and then it cuts out. So what did that mean? How did it hit you? How'd you take it?
It felt great watching. So I'm trying to like go back because we watched
like it felt like the blowout of Cronenberg endings to me. Like, it's so perfect.
Yeah, so it felt good watching. And I was like, I was very satisfied with the ending. What I thought it meant, I'm still not 100% sure what I think it is, because I think that ending has more to do, and this is just what I'm taking,
of course.
Is it felt to me dealing more with like climate change and like the pollution of Earth, because them eating the plastic felt very much like, hey, we're kind of like reaping, you know, what we sow kind of shit.
Right. Well, the funny thing is, Scott Speedman was hopeful about that.
Yeah,
he
wanted it.
Right.
Like that's why his whole people was great, and that he was.
It didn't turn out too well for him.
No, but it seemed like it was okay. It kind of felt,
and his son's reveal, which led up to the ending, where they autopsied his son, and inside his son was like the pollution of the ocean and messages and weird shit. Right?
Bunch of gross shit. So I don't know if it was like Cronenberg feeling optimistic about the future. It felt because, you know, it's called Crimes of the Future. Right. So like that would indicate that like we're fucking something up royally.
Maybe. Or we have a future. That might be him being optimistic.
Yeah, so I do think there was some sort of slight optimism of maybe we can turn things around.
Okay.
When it comes to like our current situation.
So interesting. So it felt like a happy ending to you. That's what I wanted to figure out was, did you feel like this movie had a happy ending? Because I think it's the best movie of the year. I don't think it's particularly a horror movie. I know that's a dumb argument.
Right.
It's clearly a horror movie in terms of the visuals and the gore and his pedigree or whatever. But it doesn't seem like, it seems like a horror movie the way Bride of Frankenstein's a horror movie. But I have a theory about the ending, so I'll talk about that in a second. It's not going to take long. But my theory of the ending is that my theory leads to the movie having a happy ending, and a lot of horror movies don't have happy endings,
Right.
right? But you also think the movie has a happy ending,
So
that makes me feel better.
Yeah, it did. I certainly did not like experience the ending and felt any kind of like lingering dread. Like I was just
Because there's a way to read the ending where he dies, right? Where he's being poisoned. The thing he's been trying to do the whole movie is die.
right.
And he eats this shit, and then he gets that look on his face, and it freezes out. I mean, he might have poisoned himself. He might not be able to eat plastic. He looks. The thing is does he look angelic because he finally was able to kill himself, or does he look angelic because he's eating something? And it's got to be the second one because of the way the chair acted, right?
Right.
So, all right. Here's my theory about the ending. I think the ending is about evolution. So I think it is what the movie was saying, which was that the concern of the movie that they keep saying over and over again is that the reason they're tattooing. By the way, the tattoos are rambunctious. Is one of my favorite lines in the movie.
Oh yeah.
It's the perfect word for that. It's just no one else would say that, but that character. The tattoos of the organs and all that stuff. What's happening here is the concern of the people in the movie, insofar as there's a conspiracy, insofar as they living it and people are hiding, is that they're afraid people are evolving away from human. Right? If you just start developing your own weirdo organs that no one knows what they do, and then your children inherit those, and then they inherit those, the human race will subdivide into a whole bunch of weaker, more divided subspecies, and there won't be a core human one left. That's what they're trying to prevent, is it all dissolving into nothing.
Right.
So evolving away from human, I think, right? Because the characters keep saying that, right? Matter of fact, the inner beauty pageant, the person who works with Kristen Stewart, literally says the words that I just said, and like, we need to prevent that. That seems to be what the conspiracy is trying to do. So if they're trying to prevent people from, they're trying to track it, I guess. So they like the evolution of it, but they're trying to track to make sure that no one gets too evolved away from humans, right? What has Vigo been doing the entire movie?
Just growing organs.
And
It's not non-successfully eating or digesting his.
and cutting the organs out, killing them, right? He's fighting evolution.
All right.
He's not letting his body evolve. And there's this amazing moment where Scott Speedman, this is where my theory came from, where Lea Seydoux and Vigo and Scott Speedman are talking over the body of the son or whatever. And he goes to Vigo, have you ever thought that you might be standing in the way of a beautiful process your body's trying to achieve? And Lea Seydoux's like, his body's trying to kill him. We're making art out of the trauma of his body. Is like, has this out of control evolution process, and if you just let them all go, it would be the fly.
Right.
Right? That's her theory, is, well, we can't let him turn into the fly. As soon as like a fly antenna comes out, which is what the organs are, we chop it up and then we turn it into art, right? She goes, we turn it into art. And he goes, are you?
Dude.
Right? And it's interesting that he's so confident, especially the way his character turns out to be really wrong about some things. But he is not letting his body evolve. He's slicing, cauterizing, and going back to Vigo without that organ, and the organ's over there in the stand, right? This guy wants the human race to be able to subdivide wherever it pleases. Scott Speedman wants us to be able to, some people want to have surgery that lets them eat plastic, great. If some people want to have surgery that lets them eat sewage, great. If some people want to have surgery that lets them eat penguins, probably not great, but whatever, right? He wants people to have the species to have the ability to evolve and flourish, right? When Vigo eats the plastic thing and the chair shuts down, he realizes that he spontaneously evolved this thing that they had surgeries for. So it is optimistic because his body is trying to evolve him where their surgeries are trying to evolve them. So he's on the natural track of where they were on the artificial track. It syncs up. That's where it's supposed to head. We are supposed to eat the garbage. We are supposed to evolve to this. That's why not only is he at peace because he can eat, he's at peace because he realizes that the art that he was doing was not the important part.
Okay.
Right? The important part was evolving to this thing that we were meant to, and not fighting the process anymore, right? And if you think about not fighting the process, like Jeff Goldblum heroically fought the process of becoming the Fly for a minute, but it didn't work. He became the Fly.
Yeah, that did.
Cronenberg is trying to not die, right? But he's gonna die. I'm
Right.
sorry, David.
Bad news.
Right? Like it's an irreversible process, right? So like Vigo is fighting this process. He's fighting this process, and then he doesn't have to fight the process anymore. And the art was the bridge to get him to the understanding of where he needed to go. Movie ends.
That weirdly, for some reason, I don't know how, I didn't really expect that, but that weirdly kind of lines up with the Untethered Soul. Michael Singer. I started listening to the Untethered Soul.
What?
Yeah.
What the fuck is that? I don't know what that is.
He started talking about like your inner voice.
What's the Untethered Soul?
Well, I'm very fresh into it. Alex after this episode.
That's
really,
weird that this
can really. Well, hang on, let me see if
it is. Yeah, it is with some
Let
wisdom.
me see if it can give me a little thing here. Spiritual teacher Michael A. Singer explores the question of human identity and shows how the development of the consciousness can enable us all to dwell in the present moment and achieve happiness and self-realization.
Yep, we were right. This movie was light with very little meaning. Okay, hit us. Yeah, but how does that sync up? That's amazing.
The process. Sometimes you have to just surrender to the process.
Which is
And you have to just let go, because when you try to fight it, it gets worse. But when you let go, there's a freedom that comes with it.
Right.
And the reality, you can just, you're in a different sort of reality of just like letting go and just going down that river of whatever.
Right. And also, I could be wrong about kind of like the specific of the tracks or where they're headed or whatever. It just, the vibe of where the ending was headed to me felt like it's a little horrifying. I see horrifying implications in there, clearly, right?
Right.
But it also mainly felt like, since I was rooting so hard for the chair, and I felt like the chair won, that it had to be happy.
Right.
Right? Like, if the chair's happy, I'm happy. And the chair was purring, for God's sake. So, God bless the chair. Long live the new chairs.
I would take a chair. I would not want the bed, because the bed's whole thing is like helping you try to experience pain. Yeah. So I can.
Nope.
I do not want Tempur-Pedic to adopt that.
Nope.
But the chair that helps you digest, sure.
I do want to mention one thing, though, that it could be totally accidental. It could be random. I just thought it was just an amazing grace note if it was on purpose. Is there's a moment at the end where they're doing the feeding. Vigo's going to try the plastic bar, right? And I don't think it would surprise me if it was accidental that he has this hilarious, like, easy bake oven plate of food in front of him, like Play-Doh peas.
Yeah, it's a weird looking
look
plate.
Like only children would eat.
As they would say in American Psycho, it's a playful yet mysterious little dish.
Yeah, totally of weird looking food, man. Like NASA Tang looking.
Part was
stuff.
green, part was orange.
Yeah, it was very strange. But so this plate's been sitting here with this like weirdo food, like they're trying to goop into his mouth, and the chair's trying to make work for him as hard as it can, right? And he has been feeding himself most of the movie. Like he it has spoons and arms and all kinds of things, whatever. But for the final move, for the one where you find out was evolution on your side or not, Leia feeds it to him. She opens the wrapper and she's the one who gives him the bite. And then he takes it from her and he sits in the chair and eats it, whatever. But she feeds him almost like a mom would. Yeah. And he's like a kid in a chair at this point. And the fact that she fed him, I thought was really cool, because if you go back and you look at this movie, they're really like a true partnership. They really do figure everything out together. They're not backstabbing each other. You think they might be. You think they might be like a Monica Bellucci, the Merovingian situation, that they might be really artistic rivals, or, not like whatever. She's clearly jealous of Kristen Stewart at some point. Or Kristen Stewart's, Vigo calls her attractive, and she didn't like
No,
that,
she
right?
did
So,
not like that at all.
matter of fact, someone asked Kristen Stewart whether Léa Seydoux was Vigo's lover, and she's like, no, she's his performance art partner.
Yeah,
she's not admitting.
they tried to make it clear like what the lines were.
Right, exactly. So right, exactly. But I just they figured everything out together. There were a lot of scenes where they just kind of looked at each other, and you could see that they were exchanging like, is this guy for real? Are we being tricked? And in a lot of these kind of movies, you see the Lady Macbeth dynamic where they betray each other, and one of them ends up dying or like turning on each other or whatever. And I like that didn't happen. She asks him, you look like you're in so much pain you can't even eat a bite anymore. And he's like, it's time to try plastic bar. He's like, it's time. And then she gives it to him, and she's filming it because she's still an artist. She's still at a remove. She's not like a normal like just helping the person I love kind of vibe. She's way too complicated for that. But she goes, yeah, it's time, and she's the one who helps him do it, and they do it together. And you don't see that a lot in horror movies where you see a true partnership that lasts all the way through. It kind of reminded me of, I don't remember the characters' names, but the stoner and the other character in the cabin
Yeah.
of Woods. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They had that vibe, and you don't see that a lot in horror movies done well, and I really liked it.
Overall, the whole movie was like it makes me want to go and watch more Cronenberg.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still kind of blown away by just like how relaxing this movie was. I expected you hear walkouts, you hear gore, this, that, the other, and I mean you get characters with really complex but like pretty streamlined relationships. The movie shot beautifully.
Yep.
I don't remember much of the score for some reason. Like I can't really remember any music, which is kind of weird. I know there's some there.
I remember some. I mean, it was pretty heavy on the music to begin with. It actually reminded me of The Shining, and it was really good. It just went away for some reason.
Yeah, I can't really like recall like any like big score moments or anything like that. But everyone was great. Kristen Stewart was wonderful. Viggo Mortensen. I always mess up that.
Cronenberg is right. Kristen Stewart is doing some weird shit in here that people are going to find out 20 years from now with some weird acting shit that was next level. It was like she's trying shit.
I buy that.
That is very strange that people will figure out later. It's a very thing. There was this shout out to an artist named Marcel Duchamp, who did a painting called Nude Descending a Staircase. You should, if you haven't heard of the painting, Google it because it's one of the most amazing paintings ever.
What's it called?
Nude Descending a Staircase. It's one of the most amazing paintings I've ever seen in my life. It looks like nothing until you look at it closely, and then it's a freeze frame in time, like a stop image of a woman going up or down a staircase. But you got to look real close to see it. And it's like she's been sliced into slices, like the horse in the cell.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then just like in time kind of put down the staircase, right? And I don't think it's accidental that the only artists this movie mentioned were Picasso and Duchamp, because that painting is the most Cronenbergian classic painting ever made.
Yeah, that looks
right.
very.
And they do mention Francis Bacon, which makes sense because he's terrifying. But his art is terrifying. But this painting in particular, but what Duchamp represents, and I think Duchamp was a very calm, confident, kind of cocky, very genius artist and incredibly genius chess player. Amazing to have that many skills all at once, right? Just an incredible guy. But this is the Duchamp Cronenberg movie. So I'm all in.
Looking at this painting, like if I had this on a wall, I would walk past it. I wouldn't be. It's not like very striking, but
right?
I would probably take some. I would view something different every time I looked at it, and I feel like I would
if you didn't know the title and if you were just walking by it, you have no idea what you were looking at. I would imagine. Like I wouldn't. If you didn't tell you that was Dude Descending a Staircase and you just saw it, I don't think you would know that was a person.
No, I would have no idea. I would think it looks pleasant,
right?
Like I wouldn't think it's an ugly piece of art by any means.
But it's actually time traveling. That's where she was. Then that's where she was a second ago. Then that's where she was a second ago. Then that's where she was. That painting is time traveling, right?
Wow.
Right, exactly.
It makes me want to rewatch Crimes of the Future,
which is what Cronenberg's doing, which is why I think he dropped the name. But anyway, check out the movie and let us know what you think, because we thought it was fantastic.
Oh, it's totally good. And now I have to go and watch the rest. I have to brush up on.
We'll watch Videodrome together. I'm
excited
excited to see So Videodrome was not relaxing when I first saw it. It was one of the scariest movies I ever saw, as I recall when I first saw it. The Criterion Collection actually re-terrified me as an adult when I bought it and saw it like 2 in the morning when I was way too drunk. And the Blu-ray menu screen is disturbing, and then it got into the movie, and I got unnerved again by this fucking movie. But I have a feeling that to someone who's never seen it, it might almost be relaxing because it's so retro now. Like,
Right.
you're going to be like, whatever that astronaut was doing in the opening scene of shots of when MTV rolled their credits, like, that's what that whole movie is going to look like. And that might be fuzzy relaxing to you now. Like,
I'm interested.
we'll see if Videodrome is terrifying or relaxing to you.
I'm game. Well, Crimes of the Future, we can't recommend it enough.
Love it.
Check it out. Until next time, stay scary. Watch a bunch of horror movies. See you next time. Bye.